she and her group hurled stones and bricks at the attackers, and even engaged in hand-to-hand combat with swords and spears.
What? What? Women engaging hand-to-hand combat. Women engaging... Bro, that is the most badass shit that I have heard in a long time.
The defenders hurled loaves of bread over the walls toward the starving Spanish troops. This bold gesture made it painfully clear.
No! Nah, bro. Diabolical. Alright. Siege of Haarlem.
On the 18th of December,
I was supposed to react to this guy more because this guy had excellent videos to react to.
the Spanish army under Don
But honestly, I just never got to it. But this is a suggestion. So
this marked the beginning of a siege characterized by extensive mine warfare, a naval battle on the Sea of Haarlem, the Haarlemmer Meer, and the valiant efforts of armed citizens, including the famous Kenau Simonsdokter Hasselaar. The stakes were high. Haarlem had thrown its lot in with the Dutch revolt, determined to free itself from the grip of Spanish rule. Don Federico wanted to nip this uprising in the bud by wiping out Haarlem and its rebellious inhabitants. This is how modern historiography tells the story of the Staggering Siege of Haarlem. In 1566, Dutch rebels rose against their ruler, Philip II of Spain, a fervent Catholic. When Protestant resistance fighters unleashed a wave of iconoclastic fury, Philip opted for open confrontation. He installed Fernando Alvarez de Toledo, the Duke of Alba, known as the Iron Duke, as governor of the Spanish Netherlands, and instructed him to, quote, eradicate Protestantism and disobedience through inquisition and public executions, as well as to abolish the privileges of the Dutch nobility and the autonomy of the cities and to introduce stricter taxes. Alba was ruthless and uncompromising in fulfilling this mission. Among other things, he established the so-called Council of Troubles, a tribunal that could summon and convict anyone, regardless of rank or name, allowing Alba to eliminate enemies of his king under the guise of justice. According to some estimates, he had between 1,000 and 6,000 dissenting nobles executed and many more expropriated. Among those summoned to appear before the Council of Troubles was the leader of the rebels, one of the most powerful noblemen in the Netherlands, William of Orange, also known as William the Silent. After defying the summons and facing ostracism, William attempted to break Alba's iron grip by invading the Netherlands, aiming to spark a nationwide rebellion. This offensive is often considered the first act of the 80 Years' War, but it was a miserable failure. William's forces were driven back, and the Dutch fight for independence seemed to be over before it had even begun. But then the famous Watergeuzen, known in English as the Sea Beggars, entered the scene. These privateers backed the rebellion, putting pressure on the Spanish by raiding ships and harbors, severely limiting their freedom of movement. In 1572, they captured Den Briel in Holland, sparking a renewed wave of resistance. One by one, towns joined the rebels, including Haarlem, Alkmaar, and Leiden. After the Sea Beggars also captured Middelburg, the provinces of Holland, Zeeland, and Utrecht recognized William of Orange as their stadtholder, or steward. With this newfound support, William launched a second invasion. In response, Alba mounted a counteroffensive, capturing Valenciennes before laying siege to Mons. After the garrison surrendered on the 19th of September, the campaign shifted into a punitive mission. The Spanish captured Mechelen and brutally sacked the city in what became known as the Spanish Fury, prompting many towns in the southern Netherlands to once again swear allegiance to Alba. To restore order in the north as well, the Iron Duke sent his son, Federico Alvarez de Toledo. Don Federico sacked Zutphen, slaughtering hundreds of inhabitants, which sent shockwaves through towns in Gelderland, Overijssel, and Friesland, driving them to collapse under the threat of similar brutality.
Okay, so the reason why I'm like so quiet here, if you're watching me long enough, you know that when I'm like super quiet, I'm not really like doing any reactions because I'm just kind of like taking all the information. And the reason why I'm just sitting here taking in all the information is because the 80 Years' War slash Dutch revolt is one of those things that I actually don't know anything about. I said before in a previous reaction that I need to react to this because the Dutch revolt, the 80 Years War, always seemed interesting to me, but I never ever reacted to it. I never learned about it in the past. Like, it is just completely blank to me, really and truly. So I'm just sitting here just processing everything. I'm like, oh wow, okay. The only thing that I would question is you have all these Dutch people here, right? How did the Spanish get control of that? I always thought that the Netherlands was like, oh wait, didn't they get control of the Netherlands from like marriages or something like that? I don't know. Somebody can explain that to me in the comments.
He then advanced to Amsterdam, making an example of Naarden. Although the town opened its gates to him, Don Frederique gathered nearly the entire population in the church and had set it ablaze.
Wow!
Thousands of news sheets spread
oh
the
my
story
gosh!
of the massacre throughout the northern provinces.
Oh my goodness!
These early forms of mass media, made possible by the printing press, then just over a century old, amplified the horror. The pro-independent faction seized the moment, using the massacre not only to stoke outrage, but to rally resistance.
Bro, what the hell is the point of massacring people? Seriously. I said this before, I'll say it again. That's such a horrible tactic. Like, you're just gonna spark anger in people. Like, what were they? You're trying to put down the revolt. Common sense should tell you massacring all these people might make the fire get worse.
History teaches us a crucial lesson. The news had always been a double-edged sword, capable of illuminating truth, but also spreading propaganda, educating the public while simultaneously shaping opinion. That lesson feels more urgent today than ever. In an age where ad-driven algorithms...
Is this a sponsor? What the hell? A sponsor at the beginning of the video is crazy.
Town that had already surrendered, Don Frederique went too far. Rather than further intimidating the insurgents, he transformed the rebellion into a desperate fight for survival of the cities of the northern provinces. Alba's next target was the small town of Haarlem, strategically positioned on a crucial land route between North and South Holland. By capturing it, he hoped to sever the rebels in North Holland from those in the south, defeating them one group at a time. When the city council of Haarlem learned that the Spaniards were advancing, the frightened council members sent a delegation to Amsterdam to negotiate with Don Frederique and beg for mercy. However, as they journeyed, Wigbold Ripperda, the governor of Haarlem, convinced the city guard to remain loyal to William of Orange and the rebellion. In a bold move, they overthrew the council and replaced it with citizens who, like Ripperda, refused to negotiate. Haarlem was determined to fight for its freedom.
That's what I like to see. The real
The 11th
siege.
of December, 1572.
Oh, hell nah. Look at this. Bro. The Netherlands is probably like the worst place to fight a war. Like, actually. Do you see? Like, due to the fact the place is literally below freaking sea level. Or, I should better say, fight a war before modern period of time. Like, early modern period back. That's what I'm talking about, okay? Because modern period now, the Netherlands is literally just a speed bump, pretty much. But back then, all this water that could be used to like defend, bruh. Oh, that's so hell.
Don Federico arrived near Haarlem, leading an army.
Honestly, you don't even have to tell me why this siege is freaking staggering. It's the freaking Netherlands, bro. Early modern era Netherlands, bro. Any siege in any of these towns near these large reservoirs of water would be staggering. Any
army of 14,000 men. In stark contrast, Haarlem's garrison consisted of just 2,000 soldiers, and its defenses were clearly outdated. The city was surrounded by an 8-meter high wall and a moat, but the fortifications dated back to the early 15th century. The only modern feature was a ravelin positioned directly in front of the Kruisport, the eastern gate. Semicircular towers, serving as artillery platforms, reinforced the old wall at intervals of roughly 100 meters. Confident in his overwhelming numbers, Don Federico assumed the march to Haarlem would be a veritable walk in the park. The first to oppose the Spaniards was Lumi, whose full name was William II de la Marck, Admiral of the Sea Beggars and Deputy Stadtholder of William of Orange in Holland. On the 13th of December, he attempted to halt Don Federico's advance with 4,000 men at the Manpad, a side road between Leyden and Haarlem. However, his forces were vastly outmatched by Don Federico's seasoned troops. The Spaniards opened the battle with a relentless barrage, maintaining their fire until Lumi's men began to falter. At that point, the Spaniards surged into close combat, routing the rebels. This defeat stunned the defenders of Haarlem so much that they offered to surrender to the Spaniards, hoping they would be spared. But the Iron Duke and his son refused.
Did I hear that correctly? He refused the surrender of the city? Wait, did I hear that correctly?
Defenders of Haarlem so much that they offered to surrender to the Spaniards, hoping they would be spared. But the Iron Duke and his son refused. At that
Huh? Why? 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 He refused the surrender of the city? What? What type of shit? Oh, hell nah. Alright, okay. Oh, bro, I don't want... That's hurting my head.
point, they had
okay.
no choice. They owed their men several months' pay, but lacked the funds to settle the debt.
Wait. Let me hear what he said.
At that point, they had no choice. They owed their men.
Wait. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but I need to make sure I understand why he did
would
this.
Be spared. But the Iron Duke and his son refused. At that point, they had no choice. They owed their men several months' pay, but lacked the funds to settle the debt. The only thing keeping the troops from mutiny was the prospect of plundering Haarlem.
Wow.
After the
Wow. That is actually mad, bro. Wow, okay.
surrender, Don Federico grew even more confident that he would quickly take Haarlem. He gave little thought to his approach, setting up a fortified camp and several gun emplacements on the flat, easily accessible terrain outside the city. When the batteries were ready on the 18th of December, he began a short but intense bombardment. Within 2 days, the Spanish guns were out of ammunition. Don Federico then ordered an assault on the wall of the Kruisport, which had borne the brunt of the attack. This ill-advised charge was likely a result of overconfidence, as the Spaniards met unexpectedly fierce resistance and were forced to retreat. The rapid assault had failed, and Don Federico had to pause the siege to procure more ammunition. Seizing the opportunity, William of Orange sent 600 reinforcements to Haarlem on the 29th of December. Supplies also began flowing in as the city was not fully surrounded. The Spanish struggled to block these shipments particularly by water. This was because the river Sparne connected Haarlem with the Haarlemmer Meer, a large floodplain where Amsterdam Schiphol Airport stands today. The sea beggars regularly brought troops, food and other supplies into the city via this route. On the 8th of January, Don Federico reported to King Philip, quote, "The city is very large, and we can do nothing to prevent the enemy from entering and leaving at will. This is the reason why they are holding out so well." It was now clear to everyone that the siege would be anything but a swift victory. The Spanish guns resumed their bombardment on the same day Don Federico wrote to the king. This time, the Spaniards focused on cutting off Haarlem's supply lines, advancing toward the city far more cautiously than they had in December, meter by meter, using approach trenches. On the 15th of January, they reached a ravine before the cruise port and occupied it without resistance. But the harsh winter began to take its toll on the Spanish army. Cold, snow and disease steadily weakened their numbers, while Haarlem's garrison grew stronger with continuous reinforcements. When Don Federico launched another assault on the 31st of January, his exhausted troops were met by a formidable force: 3,500 to 4,000 soldiers, 600 militia members, and over 1,000 armed citizens. Among them was a company of women led by the legendary Kenau Simonsdochter Hasselaar. Kenau, nearly 50 at the time, was no ordinary citizen. She ran her late husband's shipyard and was known for her fierce temperament and refusal to back down from conflict.
What a boss! What a boss! This right here is a real strong, independent woman. Right here, folks. I see all these videos of people saying, "Oh, what happened to men? What happened to men? Blah, 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 blah." What happened to women? Let's answer that question. But I'm not going to go down that route. I'm not going to go down that route. One, because my channel isn't really about that. And number two, you barely, like I said in my previous video, you barely say like one critique on the women in the type of society that we live in. You smite down. You get smited down, bruh. This is ridiculous, honestly. But I said this a long time ago, like a year ago. I love it whenever I see women like showing up, okay, in a time period like this. Like, it's always fun to see, honestly. But no, like I said, don't get me wrong. Some of the things that people say about men are pretty true. Like, it is true that men have gotten very weak over time. That is true. That is very true. I'm saying this because, you know, I don't want people having this idea of me that I'm on one side. No, okay. I criticize men more than I do women, actually. You just haven't seen it. At least not yet. And I have to say this because, again, we live in a hypocrisy. You barely say one thing about women that sounds... It might not even be bad. It might just be constructive criticism. Oh, no, sexist. Oh, no, you lose your job. So, you know...
During the assault, she and her group hurled stones and bricks at the attackers.
Oh, what? Wait, what? Hold on a second. Let me hear it again.
Time was no ordinary citizen. She ran her late husband's shipyard and was known for her fierce temperament and refusal to back down from conflict. During the assault, she and her group hurled stones and bricks at the attackers and even engaged in hand-to-hand combat with swords and spears.
What? What? Women engaging hand-to-hand combat. Women engaging... Bro, that is the most badass shit that I have heard in a long time. Bro, you cannot tell me that's badass. That is... Bruh. That... I don't know. That's awesome to me. That's so freaking awesome to me, bruh. Because men are more stronger than women. So... They're literally the underdogs. Naturally, I'm gonna root for the freaking underdogs.
Now is often portrayed as a stout, stocky woman with masculine features. And to this day, a particularly domineering woman in the Netherlands might be called a ware kenau, though not always as a compliment. Regardless of legend and
Vare
exaggeration.
Kenau, that's mad, bro. Honestly, who knows? Maybe she was more on the masculine side. Doesn't matter. She was still a woman. That's pretty freaking awesome. Engaging hand-to-hand combat. Engaging hand-to-hand freaking combat? What? You and other girls engaging hand? What the heck, bruh?
Certain is
I can't believe
the
that.
defenders of Haarlem, united and determined, successfully repelled the second Spanish assault. This second defeat was especially bitter for the Spaniards, who made a grim discovery during their advance. The defenders of Haarlem had constructed a second line of fortifications. Behind the cruise port stood a new, sturdy wall of earth and rubble, reinforced with several bastions. Even if the outer gate fell, it would offer the attackers no meaningful advantage. Morale in the Spanish camp plummeted. One dejected captain lamented, quote, "Who would believe that we are no further than we were on the first day of the siege?" Some officers even began to advocate for abandoning the siege altogether. But Don Federico,
Did you know that you can have
to hear of it. Enraged and determined to punish the city for its resistance, he vowed to make the defenders pay for his setbacks. In a grim display meant to break their spirit, he ordered a scaffold erected in front of the city walls and had his Dutch prisoners executed. The response
No. 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 This guy's an idiot. This guy's an idiot. Yep. I wanted to say so when he refused to accept the siege. Well, accept the surrender of the city, but yeah, nah. I was giving him a chance, but nah. Yeah, this guy's an idiot.
from Haarlem was both defiant and mocking. The defenders hurled loaves of bread over the walls toward the starving Spanish troops. This bold gesture made it painfully clear
No! Nah, bro. Diabolical. 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 You have so much food that you're throwing it at your enemy to mock them. Nah. If I saw that shit and I was on the Spanish side, I would just leave. I would just leave. Bro, you're the one under siege. You're the one that's supposed to be starving. But I'm starving and these niggas are throwing me food. The niggas who are supposed to be starving are throwing me food. Bruh, I would leave at that point. That's a clear sign to get out.
the besiegers had yet to sever the city's supply lines. The Spanish then resumed their slow, methodical advance. They extended their trench system above ground and began tunneling underground. Spanish miners stuck beneath Haarlem's defenses to place explosive charges, but they frequently encountered resistance. The defenders had also started digging, building so-called countermines to intercept and neutralize the charges before detonation. When the two sides' tunnels met, brutal close-quarter battles erupted in narrow underground passages. By spring, both camps focused on disrupting each other's supply lines. An insurgent army attempted to sever the Spanish connection to their headquarters in Utrecht. Sailing from Hoorn and Enkhuizen, with 24 ships across the IJsselmeer, they landed and occupied the Diemer Dike, the dike between Muiden and Amsterdam. But before the Spanish began to suffer from this disruption, loyalist troops from Amsterdam counterattacked and drove the rebels back. The Spanish, however, proved more effective. After blocking Haarlem's overland supply routes, they turned their attention to the waterways. In an effort to cut off replenishments via the Haarlemmer Meer, the Count of Bossu transported a fleet to the lake and launched a naval assault on the sea beggars operating there on the 26th of May 1573. After a fierce, hours-long battle, the beggars were forced to retreat, conceding control of the waters to the Spanish. This defeat in the Battle of the Haarlemmer Meer cut off Haarlem's last connection to the outside world. Within weeks,
Yep, GG.
The city began to run out of food. The population struggled to survive, first eating whatever animals they could find, then chewing leather from shoes and belts.
What? Nah, nigga. Nah, nigga. Nah, bruh. Nah. Chewing leather from belt shoes, bruh. I thought he was gonna say, like, they started eating, like, dead people. And I was gonna be like, okay, people are edible. That makes sense, and they're desperate. But nah, look, me personally, eating shoes is way more worse than eating a freaking dead nigga, bro.
Finally, they began to starve. On the 8th of July, William of Orange made a final attempt to relieve Haarlem. Once again, he sent 4,000 men across the Manpad. But once again, they were repelled by the Spanish. Just 4 days later, on the 13th of July, 1573, Haarlem surrendered unconditionally. Don Fadrique promised to spare the city in exchange for 240,000 guilders in reparations. Haarlem agreed, but the son of the Iron Duke kept only part of his word. While he spared the civilian population, he executed Governor Wigbold Ripperda and the entire garrison, except for the German mercenaries, because he knew that otherwise he would not be able to recruit in their homeland in the future. When the executioners grew weary from swinging their axes, the remaining soldiers were tied together and drowned in the river Sparne.
Nah. Bro, this is... Oh, what the... You know... Nah, I'm speechless, bro. I'm speechless.
Despite this bloody revenge, the conquest of Haarlem was a Pyrrhic victory. The siege had cost the Spanish over 6 months and some 10,000 men. Rather than crushing the Dutch revolt, it had intensified resistance and proved that the Spanish were not invincible. Still, Don Fadrique had achieved his immediate strategic aim. Haarlem was in Spanish hands, and rebellious Holland was split in two. His next objective was its northern part, the Norder Kwartier. Soon, Don Fadrique marched his army toward the small but well-fortified town of Alkmaar. Hey, we hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like
If you're new to my channel, you like my reactions, subscribe. If you have suggestions like this, comment it down below. Guys, I just created my Discord server for my channel members. I'm still setting it up. It's only 99 cents to become a channel member. I said this before, as we get more members, I will expand more perks. I reached 7 members, so I created the Discord server, and I plan on expanding perks even more. Link is going to be in the description, not description, but comments, where I explain the whole channel membership thing. I gotta upload a new channel membership video actually, because the old perks are obsolete because we got even more people that I have to go and explain the new perks now, because I added new perks now, which now is the Discord server, but there's more to that. Okay, so turn the bell notifications on when you subscribe, like the video so that YouTube can send this to more people. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.